Have you ever wanted to explore a spooky forest, battle a horde of monsters, go on a quest, or have special abilities like talking to plants or animals? Then Dungeons and Dragons might be the game for you. D&D is a fun role-playing game for anyone of all ages. Dungeons and Dragons is a very complex game with lots of subcategories. It's stimulating to the mind and it unites anybody who wants to play. Now, my information is coming straight from the D&D website, the D&D fan page, and D&D Beyond, which goes deep into the history of all parts of D&D. Now, Dungeons and Dragons is more than just making a character and rolling dice. The first D&D box came out in 1974 and contained 3 booklets. Magic and Men introduced the subclasses, which were the cleric, the fighting man, and the magic user. The races, which were humans, elves, dwarves, and halflings, and 3 alignments: law, chaos, and neutrality. And finally, it also included a few basic spells that went all the way up to level 6. The second book, Monsters and Treasures, contained the monster list and the magic items that you could use or find. The last book, called The Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, explains the first settings of the missions, exploration, and different adventures that you could go to. There are now 13 classes, over 100 subclasses, and 46 races, ranging anywhere from dark elves to orcs. There are also 9 different alignments that are made in a chart. One direction are ethics, which are lawful, neutral, and chaotic, and the other direction is morals, good, neutral, and evil. So you could be lawful good, or you could be chaotic evil. Those are the 2 extremes. Each session has a dungeon master and a player. The player now has a whole handbook that they must abide by that gives them the rules for their character, what skills they possess already, and what skills they need to learn. And then they also have a list of how advanced those specific skills can become. For example, elves can see in the dark, and humans can see in the light, but humans can gain special abilities where they can see in darker environments. The Dungeon Master has their own handbook that has a list of monsters, settings, pre-made missions, and beginning statistics for the players. Now, Dungeons and Dragons also help to engage the mind. To play D&D, you have to create your own character with a unique background. This would include religion, family, traumas, goals, ambitions, what they look like, and how they act and interact with other characters. During a session, players have to quickly decide what they need to do and how they need to do it. The 3 pillars of D&D are exploration, social interaction, and combat. Exploration happens when players interact with the world around them. If you see a cave, do you decide to go explore it? Do you decide to climb that mountain? Do you want to swim in the river? Social interaction happens when players communicate with one another. They can communicate with their own team, or the Dungeon Master might throw in a character that they might come across on in the river, or might find on a mountain or in a village. And then combat is simply battle. Oftentimes, players have to roll the dice to perform an action. Oftentimes, players have to roll a dice to perform an action, and the player has to do the math to keep up with their own stats. There's strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. A player starts out with specific advantages and different stats and might gain proficiencies throughout the game. For example, last time I played as an elf, and I had proficiencies in wisdom because elves live to be a very high age, and they are extremely good at wisdom. But they're not so great at strength and dexterity because they don't use their muscles very much. They tend to use their minds. Now, D&D is fun for anybody and everybody who wants to play. The game can be as simple or complex as the Dungeon Master allows, and it can just be one session, or it can go on for years. There's no age limit on D&D, and anybody who can understand it can play. I personally started playing around age 7. There are no requirements to play D&D other than an imagination, maybe some dice, and a pen and a pencil if you want to keep up with your character's sheets. Although there are plenty of apps and other technical advantages that you can use to play this game. So first, D&D players, you have to understand the rules of what you can and can't do. You must be prepared to create a character, a background, and keep up with its statistics. And then you need to make friends with the millions of different people that play. And finally, have fun. Just remember that there is life after death. You just have to make a new character sheet.